And we're back. We are working on a little bit of back bending, which I know sounds a little scary to some folks, certainly to myself, depending on what's happening on your body. It can be a little bit intimidating, but we're going to break this up into two parts. So day one is working on really the extension of your spine. So we're talking about length. Right, we're going to work the front of your hips. Often some of the back bends have you on your feet, so really the issue is not your spine. I know you tend to feel it in your low back, but really the focal point is tightness in the front of your hips. So we're going to work the hip flexors today. You're going to work some extension through the spine, and we're also going to work the strength of the back body. So that's the other component, right? Having enough support for your spine so that you're not having that low back pain. So probably less to do with your actual spine, more to do with the support from the back body and then some opening of the hips. Tomorrow we'll be working on range of motion in the shoulders and the thoracic part of your spine for things like your wheel or forearm balance at the very end if you guys are game. So today we're going to get started with a little bit of supported fish. You can grab anything that works for you. So these days it seems to be parts of your couch, pillows from your bed, whatever you have accessible is going to work just fine. You can take blocks, it's a little more aggressive. And keep in mind if you're using something like a bolster or cushions from your couch, you can turn the bolster the long way, right? Giant pillows are going to go right up towards your sacrum so that you can lay back. I am going to invite you, if it feels okay on your spine, particularly up in the shoulders and your neck, to take those cushions the shorter way so that you'll have a little more mobility happening in the upper shoulders, right? So you can certainly take blocks. That's one option. But as you lay back over your pillow, first thing you're going to do is relax your head. So instead of forcing yourself in anywhere, we're looking to release any of the holding, any of the tension, which is what we tend to do when we take things like camel, right? As we come into back bends, we're holding on for dear life. And what we really need to do is be able to ease into these spaces. So you can start to breathe a little deeper. Maybe you're starting to open the palms towards the sky. And you're going to start to let your mind wander down the length, the front line of your body. Maybe lingering just a moment, feeling, right, the lift of those low ribs. You don't have to lift them any higher. Just notice, right, shoulders are rolling behind you. You're already in a back bend. And that's what the majority of your back bend is going to come from, right? Rolling the shoulders down, lifting your low ribs away from your hips and your pubic bone. So you want to draw your belly gently in. You don't have to do too much of that right now, but then feeling the front of your hips. Mostly just bringing a little bit of awareness to them. We'll take 5 breaths. Maybe you work your mind down to find your toes. Give those suckers a little wiggle. And kind of feeling your way down the length of your spine, noticing your sacrum. So you might notice you're maybe still a little tight. You know, certainly notice if you have anything going on in the body. Maybe you simply slept wrong. As we age, that tends to get dangerous, right? So you can start by drawing the belly up and in, activate your pelvic floor, and then we'll start to tuck the chin and rise up through seated. So you keep your bolster somewhat handy. You don't need to move it too far, but you're simply going to cross your legs, come onto hands and knees, and we'll set up for your table. Just taking a long breath in to make your way to your cow. We're going to linger there just a moment. So instead of being aggressive, thinking we only have one breath, you want to pause to draw the length up the front line of your body first. Draw your belly in, rinse a little strength into the sacrum. Start to lift those low ribs away from the pubic bone and gently drop the shoulders. So don't press the shoulders. Think about drawing your head away from them. So there's work in both directions. Maybe you draw a little bit of length up both sides of your neck. And then we'll curl the toes and set up your downward facing. So as you pause here, you're going to let the posture do most of the work. Remember, we're really working on easing ourselves into the postures. Maybe that means a deeper bend in the knees. Rotate those little elbow creases gently forward. Give those shoulders one press down the back. And then we're going to step the right foot forward to a low lunge. All right, so you can certainly stay lifted for a moment as you kind of wiggle into square hips, level hips, but then we're inviting the back knee down. You can feel free to bring some blocks under your palms. Might be a nice addition. And notice your hips start to sink, but you want to press them forward. So you want to activate your glute, right, your bum, press those hips forward. That's really the focus, is activating your glutes. That's how you open, right? You extend the hip, lengthen those hip flexors. And we're going to start to bring the stretch a little into the quad. Things like bow, camel, tomorrow when you get into wheel, have a good deal to do with, right, length coming through the quad and the front of the hip. So as you press those hips forward, make sure you're leaving room to lift your low ribs, to roll your shoulders down, and that you're starting to rinse a little bit of breath. We're going to start to bend the back knee and breathe here. Again, if the stretch is a little much, you're going to keep working the glute, keep squeezing, and pause once this stretch is somewhat manageable. And again, you're not looking to exaggerate it too far. Little by little, you can stay, or you can reach one hand or the other. Right? One hand is going to be a little like dancers, or maybe it's like bow on the outside. That might be nice practice for later. And then sometimes it works, for whatever reason, slightly different if you reach for the inside with the opposite hand. You'll feel it kind of draw your foot behind you towards the opposite direction. So you want to pick the one that's working best for you. Maybe you notice your hips are sinking a little deeper. You're able to press the hips a little more forward like you do with your heart in something like upward facing dog. But roll your shoulders down one more time. And then we'll take a gentle release. Curl those back toes, maybe bring the blocks with you, and we'll press right up into your standing leg split. So don't worry about the split so much as stabilizing the hips in your sacrum, or drop that left hip a little lower until you feel some stretch coming through the right side. Right? Engaging that standing knee, move the hips up and back. We're going to start to peel open, sort of hybrid three-legged dog. All right, maybe you fell over sideways, no worries. Maybe those left fingers are reaching up the mat in some direction to draw a little more length down the side body. You're going to squeeze a little bit of strength in that lifted leg. Find the toes, give them a flex, and then exhale to fold. Ragdoll. Take your feet out a little bit wider. Just a handful of breaths. Bend your knees. And shift the weight around. Mostly just inviting some length, some gravity to make its way down your spine until you feel it maybe meet the base of your skull. Let that invite you to drop your head a little bit heavier, jaw heavier, and then inhale to lengthen. Walk those feet underneath you, and then we'll step to high plank. You take your time. Maybe your knees are up or down. So this focus really isn't about your chaturanga. We're going to take all the stress out of that. And we're going to come down maybe to baby cobra. So it's almost as though you're in locust. You don't have to worry about lifting the heels too much. If you're pressing the tops of your feet, it's just that. Press your feet into the mat. Notice which one supports your low back a little bit more and go with whatever that is. Stay lifted enough so that you could hover your palms just a little. Start to curl your toes, and we'll press with that strength into upward facing. Try not to lose that foundation that you had from the back side of the body. Lift your gaze just a little. 2. And through your tabletop, curl your toes and drive your hips up and back. Nice job. Left foot steps, low lunge. Back knee comes down, right? Grab some blocks, books, whatever you got around you at the house. These days I've been offering pots and pans. They seem to be pretty stable. But whatever you're working with, start to sink the hips. And then more importantly, start to press them a little bit forward. Making sure that you're not necessarily on the knee. You want to be on top of the knee, so the very bottom of the quad. So when you start to bend your knee, right in the base of those quad muscles, so it shouldn't bother your kneecap. You don't want to be on your kneecap. If it's still bothering you, go ahead and pad up your knee. You can roll up your mat a couple of times. Or maybe you have a blanket or something, a towel that you can slide underneath it. Once this starts to feel pretty solid, like you're not holding on in the breath there for the stretch in your quad, maybe you're reaching with a hand. Remember, you can go in either direction. If you're taking the opposite hand to the foot, you may want to let that front knee slide out a little to the side. We'll take 3 breaths here. So again, keeping the strength of your glutes, which is something we tend to lose in these back bends. I know there's a lot to focus on, but glutes are going to be the primary foundation. It's hard to just engage the glutes, so give those hips one more press. Maybe you lift a little length up the front line of your body and roll your shoulders down. Nice. And then as you curl the toes, right, you can bring the blocks if you'd like. We're going to lift to press through to standing leg split. Again, don't worry about the split. Drop the right hip a little lower. Drop your head. Blocks or no blocks, up to you. And then once you're feeling pretty solid, we're going to start to peel the hip open. All right, supporting a little stretch through the side body. Maybe you bend a knee. Maybe you're creating more of an abstract shape. Let's take a generous breath and then go ahead and release. Forward fold. Let's take a moment in ragdoll. Maybe to swish your hips a little side to side, but mostly to drop your head and your shoulders. So again, not forcing yourself to a fold, just letting gravity take over. Maybe noticing if you rock forward, some of the weight is more willing to drop, i.e. your head and shoulders. As you inhale to a flat back, move feet underneath you. And then we'll plant the palms for that chaturanga. This time coming through low plank, finding your upward facing dog, but still recreating that baby locust foundation. Keep the belly in. We're going to lower to find your forearms. You can make an adjustment. Make sure you're on your mat or somewhere. You have plenty of room. We're going to start to draw that heart forward. So I'll exaggerate, right? As though you're going to drag yourself forward. Press the heart through the shoulders. You're using the forearms. You want to fan out the fingers, engage your buns of steel there. And then lift your gaze just enough so you feel like you're lengthening up through the crown of your head. So we want this level of strength in the spine, in the belly, in the biscuits, even when we come into something like camel. We don't think of camel as being so active. We tend to follow gravity and start to sink. So just kind of build some muscular memory around this engagement. You can stay here or start to press palms and extend arms, Biju Padasana. There is a pose which sounds very similar, which is a crazy arm inversion, back bending sort of thing. Not that one, just where you extend the arms, very similar to your upward facing. And then releasing, draw palms underneath you towards that baby cobra. This time we press to high and downward facing. Get a good breath in and a good breath out. Right foot steps to warrior one. So again, not warrior one like you would in a regular vinyasa flow. It's all about the front of the quad, the engagement of your hips. So arms, really doesn't matter where you take them, maybe just hands to hips or mountain pose palms. We're really focusing on squaring the hips, squeezing your glute and pressing so that there's some stretch there. Now you might want to interlace the hands a little bit, as we'll do in locust, right? As we build towards your bow later on. And today, offering to kind of press your heart open, right? Because we're working on those back bends. And then as you start to roll the shoulders down and lift those low ribs away from your pubic bone, you might feel yourself working towards more of a baby back bend. Just make sure your belly is up and in. Your pelvic floor is active, and then you're starting to make sure that belly of yours is engaged. Again, build some muscle memory around this engagement. 3, 2, and then we're going to round for humble warrior. You can keep the bind. Maybe you shorten your stance. A little bit of release. 2. And as you breathe into airplane, we're opening the palms to face the floor, and we're pressing forward. So we are looking for that lift, right? Maybe it's first going for that up dog, exaggerated activation on the back side of the body. Down the length of your spine, again, the glute, right? Extends the hip, get that length, the lift. And then we're going to peel open towards your half moon. Still working into the hips. More about you pressing that right hip under. Feel free to take something underneath the right palm. And again, we're going to bend the knee. You guessed it, engage your glute, press the hip open. Work mindfully to find a little bit of balance. Right? So if you went over sideways, no worries, come back. And we're going to reach for the bind. We're going for the inside of the foot. Like dancers, finding a little bit of kick. Right, just enough to activate the quad. Still pressing the hip forward, and as you start to square the hips, we're lifting into dancers. But only go for maybe 60, 70% of dancers. First thing you want to do is stand up nice and tall. Again, press the right hip forward, hips extend. Start to kick a little into your hand. And make sure you can keep that engagement. Make sure you can keep the length. Right? Find that locust strength up the back side of the body as you come in. 3. So it's not about how far you get. It's more about maintaining that strength. Practicing here, so by the time we get to camel and bow, you feel as strong as supported. One more breath. And we're going to step back, shorter stance for pyramid. So extending the front leg on track. Again, we're kind of beating this one to death, but that's really what it's all about today. Biscuits. Squeeze them, press the hips forward. We get caught up in the back bend and lifting the gaze and maybe some lion's breath. So ever so simple today, you can stick with hands to hips, but we want that back leg to be super strong. All about that hip, lifted low ribs, roll the shoulders down, and then open the throat. If you feel the weight of your head drop, you want to come back. So you want the lift. If it helps to interlace, go for it. If it helps to take prayer palms, right? Fingers can face up. It's not entirely comfortable. They can face down. And your fingers might be right between the butt cheeks. That's okay. Don't worry about it. Go with what supports your low back. So we're less concerned with how far you're back bending here. We're more concerned with that left biscuit for one more breath. And then again, a little bit of reprieve. Slight bend in the front knee. So you tuck the chin. We're folding towards Parsvottanasana. Right? We want that stretch coming through the sacrum. Maybe you feel it come through hamstrings or through the glutes. And then we're going to walk the palms to step high plank. Chaturanga or not. Right? If you find up dog, it's locust, right? In terms of the back side of the body, nice and strong, downward facing. And we're going to step the left foot forward. Warrior 1. By the time we get to camel and your bow, you're not going to be thinking about it. You're just hopefully going to be doing it. Squeeze your right glute. Press the hip forward. Level the hips. Right? Squeeze the right quad. Hold that strength. Interlace. Re-square the hips. Maybe lift your gaze. As you start to draw the belly up and in, we're exhaling to fold humble warrior. 2. And as we lift towards your airplane, palms are facing the floor. Come on up in strength, in a tree. Move those hips a little bit behind you, and then start to peel the hip open. Right, we're opening half moon. Press the left hip under, squeeze that standing leg, bend the knee. We're reaching for the bind, starting to press the hip forward and kick, and then we're coming into dancers. If you have a tree to hold on to, go for it. Remember, press those hips forward first, and focus on that locust strength as you start to work. 3. So long as you can maintain the strength in the sacrum and the low back, you're good. 1 more. And we step back towards pyramid. Shortest stance. Extend the front leg on track. And as you square your hips, it's all about the right biscuit. You want to press those hips underneath you. All right, lift the low ribs. Roll the shoulders down, and then just a little, open the throat. Don't drop your head. Stay active, like you had a little string drawing you up to the sky. 3 breaths, whether you're interlacing. Whether you have prayer palms. Or you have your hands to your hips. A little tuck of your chin brings you back slowly. Slight bend in that front knee, folding Parsvottanasana. Squeeze knees and square those hips as you release to find your palms. One last time, a very mindful chaturanga through low, or maybe you skipped it, but if you find up dog, find that locust, and then you can come to tabletop. So you're gonna work all the way down onto the mat for a moment and set up for your locust and bow. It hopefully doesn't feel like a whole big deal by now because you've done all of the work. So as you come onto your belly, forehead's gonna face the floor. You wanna move low ribs away from the pubic bone. You can start with tented fingertips. You don't have to lift too far, just lifting your forehead away from the mat, heart away from the mat, until you feel strength coming right up the back of your neck. Start to lift the heels, squeeze the glutes. If you want to lift the palms too, go for it. You can stay, you can interlace. If you have a variation you love, go for it. But again, really focus on the glutes. Press your hips, front of your hips towards the mat, and locust strength, mid-back, between the shoulders. And then we're going to slowly release. We want to save that same activation as you come into your bow. So I know many of us are hesitant to grab both feet. I'm going to invite you to do it. And we're going to start on our backs. So remember, this is really about pressing your hips forward. So I apologize, but you're going to get the backside so you see what's happening. We kind of rock over. You're still kicking your feet a little into the hands, but this becomes more about wiggling your heart forward and your hips forward. Far less strain on your low back, far easier to activate the locust strength, to adjust your gaze, to lengthen the cervical spine. Rinse your shoulder blades behind you one more time. And then we awkwardly roll back through center, right to the opposite side. Awkward as it is. And then we start to uchi. You may feel like you're trying to escape being entrapped in a room or something. I think there's a game. What is that called? I did it in Boston back when we could actually see people. They lock you in a room and you have to find all these clues to get out. So maybe that's how you feel. But wiggle those hips forward one more time. Being a little bit blinded by sweat. And then uchi your heart forward one last time. And here we go. So pause, squeeze those buns of steel. Activate that locust strength, shoulders squeeze so that as you roll back through center and start your bow, it's not so aggressive. All right. As you kick into your hands, squeeze the buns. You can rock a little bit with breath. You don't have to go too high. It's wherever your body's going to invite you to today. But again, locust strength. 2. 1 more. And then slowly lower down. So shimmy the heels a little side to side. And then without much thought, find your toes. We're going to press right up into tabletop. And we're going to take stretchy camel. I don't know about stretchy camel. I don't think there's the Sanskrit word for it, but it's one of my favorites. You're basically going to sit on your heels so that as you start to plant just one set of fingertips behind you, right, the opposite arm is going to sweep and we're pressing. So again, all about the hip press. It's more about the side body, a little on the front line. Drop your gaze and then come sweeping back. Belly is strong. Opposite side. Reach. Right? Squeeze glutes, press hips. Squeeze shoulder blades behind you and lift those low ribs to the sky. And sweep back. If that's feeling really good, you can stick with that. Otherwise, we're going to come into camel. So with the same strength, right? Even stretchy camel, even if you're not down, you want to find all the activity, right? You were able to lift in locust. You can lift in camel with as much strength. And you can certainly start with blocks, right? Doesn't need to be aggressive. Again, don't drop the weight of your head. You want it lifted. And instead of having your weight sink down, we're really pressing the hips, lifting the low ribs, rolling the shoulders, and opening the throat. Not dropping the head. So wherever you are, even if you found your heels, take yourself through those same actions. Squeeze the hips, press them forward, lift the low ribs, roll the shoulders, and then open the throat. Don't drop the head. And then tuck the chin and gently come back. We have one more pose. You can stick with working the bow, if that was finally working for you, or you can stick with camel. Otherwise, you're going to take the same thing you just did, and we're going to put it into what's called hard pose, which may be appropriately named. So we're going to find our way into your downward facing. So don't think about it. You have all the strength, all the mobility. It's everything you just did, and you want to think about creating locust. And then you're going to be on the ground. Plant the palms, make it a short down dog. Look between your thumbs. Bring yourself to low plank, elbows come in, butt stays nice and high, and we kick up. And then you come all the way down. So that's it, right? Lengthening the spine, squeezing your buns of steel so that you're opening the front of the hips. And now hopefully by tomorrow, as we build off of this, into some range of motion in the shoulders and your upper thoracic spine, right between the shoulder blades, you'll be able to access things like wheel. I'll see you then. Toodles.